C3 AI is a AI player. Their ticker symbol is AI. And there are a lot of things about this company that is compared to some of the other bigger AI names, like Palantir, that are questionable. The company is up about 300% over the past month, and a lot of people think, given the low share float, about 104 million shares, and incredibly low market cap at around $2 billion just a month ago, that retail is driving the momentum because they want to put their money in a company that is literally AI driven. Well, there's been some controversy around the company. Now, the company used to be called Carbon Energy, then Carbon IoT, and then they transitioned to AI a couple of years ago. They've gone through a lot of different variations. It has always seemed, if you go through the history of the company, that they kind of pivot to the stuff that kind of works or is trendy, and then they start going in and building a business from there. There's a lot of things to just question when you're looking at this company. Not saying it can't be a major player, not saying it can't be a really strong player in the AI space in terms of their consumption-based pricing model. However, there are some things that are questionable about this company. When a company runs up 200-300% in a month, primarily because you see that retail is FOMOing into a literally AI-driven ticker, because the ticker is AI, you start to question some things. There has been an investigation launched by the lawyer who investigated Theranos. Theranos, remember the drug company? The older documentary has been on that Elizabeth Holmes basically duped investors of $9 billion for. Ended up being a fraud in terms of it could puncture your arm, read some of your blood, and then tell you if you have cancer or not. It was all fake. It was all fraud. That same lawyer that investigated Theranos is now investigating C3 AI because apparently CNBC did some great investigative journalism on this, and we're going to watch it in a second. The CEO of C3 AI, Thomas Siebel, said that they had 12,000 people in a salesforce working to sell their company software. That is not true. It is incorrect. The CEO says he doesn't remember ever saying that, and then they literally play recordings of him saying on earnings calls, we have 12,000 people in a combination with Baker Hughes, which is one of their biggest clients. Baker Hughes drives them about 40% of the revenue, which is one of the biggest red flags for this company, that they get 40% of the revenue from one of these clients, and that their 12,000 salespeople working at Baker Hughes is going to be able to sell C3 software. That is not happening. C3 also lowered their full year guidance. And if you have 12,000 people in a sales force, I mean, that is a monster sales force. Why are you reducing your full year guidance? Investors are claiming in the lawsuit that the stock price was artificially inflated because they felt they were misled into thinking that there was a massive sales force behind the company. Whether the product can sell or not, that's the risk you take as an investor. But knowing how many people are in the sales force is pretty common. I mean, you should be able to know the allocation of people selling the software in a software sales company. They believe that they were duped out of that and that it was not 12,000 people. So let's take a look out of this video. We'll see what will happen in this lawsuit. My overall thoughts, will the lawsuit result in anything? I don't know, because a lot of these tech lawsuits and software lawsuits end up, either getting settled or not really going too far. But it does make you understand, or at least think a little bit more deeply about the AI hype that is going on and what countries will be profitable and remain, and what companies, not countries, are probably a little shady, to say the least, in terms of how they're working with AI and their overall software. Let's take a look at this.
One of the biggest beneficiaries of Wall Street's AI hype, it's a company called C3 AI. Shares already up more than 200% this year. But short sellers and a high short interest percentage threaten to disrupt that momentum, as does an investor lawsuit alleging CEO Tom Siebel misrepresented metrics with one of their largest customers. Yasmin Karam has the story.
Competing in the artificial intelligence revolution, California billionaire Tom Siebel
AI has all of a sudden become king.
and his company C3 AI, trading under the ticker AI on the New York Stock Exchange. Shares of the company tripled earlier this year on the hype around AI.
We seem to be the name of the game.
But there are also allegations Siebel has misrepresented his company.
This is about a company that used smoke and mirrors to go public.
Reed Cathrine, who previously represented investors in reaching a settlement against Theranos, is now behind a new investor lawsuit against C3 AI, alleging the company misled investors that it had access to a 12,000-person sales organization as part of its partnership with Houston-based energy technology company Baker Hughes, a C3 AI client that uses its AI solutions and sells the product to companies in the oil and gas industry. The first instance being in a pre-IPO filing that said we are jointly marketing and selling with the active engagement of Baker Hughes, which has a 12,000-person sales organization. At an interview in C3 AI's headquarters, Siebel stood by his statements about the size of the sales force.
Did you say the 12,000 people were working
with Baker Hughes to sell the C3 AI product?
I believe it's on the order of 12,000.
On a call, you said in partnership with Baker Hughes, we have 12,000 people selling every single day into the oil and gas industry. And that was said about 13 times within that year.
Really? What were the dates?
This is hilarious, bro. When someone's like, really? What did I say that? It's like, this is documented evidence. You can't, I mean, she just literally read a literal quote from the guy. I mean, this right here, it's shady, bro. It's like, I don't know what to think about this.
I don't remember saying it 13 times.
Here are some of those 13 times.
They have 12,000 people selling with us around the world every day.
12,000 people selling with us every day. I mean, even if you don't literally say they're selling our software, you know what you're doing. I mean, this is absolutely misleading saying you have 12,000 people selling with us every day. That means you have a sales force of presumably at least 12,000 people.
Come on, for a company like us to get 12,000 people.
12,000 people selling with us. 12,000 people.
I have 12,000 people selling for me at Baker Hughes.
I mean, look at that. Look at the arrogance there. I have 12,000 people selling for me at Baker Hughes. I mean, there's a lot of, I mean, again, I don't know what's going to happen with the lawsuit, but this is absolutely telling investors you have 12,000 people. These are on public earnings calls or conferences where you're saying this.
12,000 people working with us.
Dan Brennan, a senior vice president at Baker Hughes who oversees the partnership, was at C3 the day we interviewed Siebel.
We've got a large sales force. I couldn't tell you what the exact number is.
After initially being unable to quantify the size of the sales force, Brennan later told CNBC he estimated that the 12,000 figure was in the ballpark.
I'm not certain what the number is today. Okay, it was represented to us at one point in time, those 12,000. I'm not certain what the number is today.
The lawsuit says the publicity about the massive Baker Hughes sales force artificially inflated C3's stock. Siebel and other insiders took advantage of this by selling more than 11 million shares.
I think that if you look at the percent of my ownership in the company, that was a very small percentage. I'm still the largest shareholder, and I have a substantial commitment to the company.
And then the cards came tumbling down. They had to admit that the smoke was just smoke, and there wasn't 12,000 people there.
Catherine points to a statement Siebel made in a December 2021 earnings call, and he alleges it reveals the company never had the full resources of the repeatedly touted 12,000-person sales force.
They really weren't the people with the relationships, and they weren't the people with the quotas, and they weren't the people with the deep industry expertise.
Catherine's four investors allege the multi-month lag on that disclosure was one of the factors that cost them more than $1.2 million. In a motion to dismiss, attorneys for C3 AI don't address the exact number of the sales force, instead calling Siebel's numerous statements about the thousands of salespeople classic puffery that no reasonable investor would have taken literally, adding the number touted was obvious hyperbole.
And if that's the case, I mean, investors have a really good argument that not only did they sell when the shares were inflated, but the misleading statements around the sales force led investors to lose money and not be able to appropriately assess the business.
Three AI attorneys say it doesn't matter what the Salesforce statements were. The partnership with Baker Hughes was in part responsible for increasing revenue.
Yeah, and that's the case. But like, if you had tell me you have 60 salespeople and you increase revenue, I may not invest. But if you have 12,000 or 20,000, I might be more comfortable investing because you got 12,000 people selling your software, right? So even if you're increasing revenue, it's the magnitude and the scope of revenue that increases as a result of the quantification of the sales force, which is a pretty decent case to me. Again, I don't know what's going to happen with the lawsuit, but it definitely makes you think twice about a company that misrepresents themselves this deeply.
Two former Baker Hughes employees who asked not to be identified due to fear of repercussions told us while there are 12,000 total salespeople at the company, they are not all trained and qualified to sell the C3 AI product. A 2021 agreement between C3 and Baker Hughes shows that C3 would train up to 60 Baker Hughes sales personnel on its product free of charge. A Baker Hughes spokesman said the company has trained well beyond 60 employees, but wouldn't clarify a total. How do your investors understand the difference between puffery when it comes to the business and factual statements?
I can't speak for them. I think you have to ask them.
After our interview, C3's communications team emailed a statement which read, Mr. Siebel stated that C3 AI had access to 12,000 to a 12,000 person sales organization at Baker Hughes because he believed it to be true and has no reason to believe it is not true today. I also asked a former SEC official about...
I mean, that's just bullshit. Like, what do you mean no reason to believe it's not true today? Are they selling it or not? I mean, this is the type of... I cannot in good faith invest in a company like this because at the end of the day, you're investing in hopefully honest leadership. When you look at someone like Alex Karp versus something like this or Anthony Noto, what do you mean you have no idea? I'm like, either you have it or not. When the SPAC, stuff went to crap for Palantir, Alex Karp said, look, we messed up. I mean, he admitted at least his mistake. This guy's not even taking any accountability for this.
About this puffery, as Siebel's attorneys call it, the former official said that you're allowed to burnish your brand, but you can't do so by changing or fabricating the numbers that are important to investors. Brian?
Yeah, it's been outside of the lawsuit. There's also 2 short seller reports circulating on C3AI, not to mention about 29% of the company's public float is currently sold short. In other words, people are betting against it. That's an unusually high percentage. Is there concern about this Baker Hughes relationship in either of those reports?
There are questions over C3's relationship with Baker Hughes, not just the salesforce, but about C3's unbilled receivables, meaning money that's owed but has not yet been paid. Baker Hughes, one of C3's biggest customers, has the highest amount of unbilled receivables, over 91% in the quarter that just ended. Now, I asked Siebel about this. He said he has no concerns over Baker Hughes' payment plan. Also worth noting, in April, Baker Hughes announced it divested 1.7 million C3AI shares. Despite the optics of this, Brian, Baker Hughes says its commitment to C3AI remains the exact same.
You know, the stock's been trading really like a meme stock in a way, up 200% this year, and you have to think at least some of it is because of its glamorous ticker, AI. But has this company, which is probably new to a lot of our viewers, always been about AI?
This is a good point.
Well, part of the mystery around this company is that it has undergone many, many name changes to correspond with what's hot in the market at that time. In 2009, it was founded as C3 Energy up until 2016 when it changed to C3 IoT. Brian, I'm sure you remember when Internet of Things had a brief moment in the sun. And then in 2019, C3 IoT rebranded to what we now know as C3 AI.
And see, right there, I mean, again, that's really good investigative journalism from CNBC. That's part of the reason why it's really hard for me to get on track with AI. They might still end up winning. They might still end up growing. They might still end up getting momentum and from investors, and the AI hype might go to them. But I cannot invest in a company that has rebranded itself that many times, not out of innovation, but out of pure speculation. Energy's hot, IoT's hot, AI's hot. And now the CEO is saying he doesn't remember saying on live, public, documented earnings calls how many people are selling your product. Are you kidding me? Like, that level of gross negligence is just something that it's hard. And again, if Alex Karp did something like that, I would be criticizing him as well, as much as I love him. Because this is just like, this is misleading at a very high level. And most of the time, the people that mislead this either have a crappy product, they don't believe in their product, they don't believe in their ability to sell it, they don't believe in the trajectory of the company. And if they're selling, and even I don't care how much more percentage of shares they have, if you're selling as investors are investing on news that is literally not true, it's one of the most crappiest things you can do as a human being. It's not something that I would be excited for as an investor. So C3 AI, look, if you were going to invest in an AI play, I think there's a lot of better companies out there. You can do your due diligence on AI, but when you look at something like this, this doesn't look good for Thomas Siebel and what he's projected as his company. So those are my thoughts. Let me know what you think. This is a main Palantir competitor, AI competitor, and this is what's going on currently with the company. Thanks so much for listening, watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.